So this first chapter that we are reading last, as per the suggestion of Rabbi Steinsaltz, really speaks about the four worlds and the different inhabitants, should we say, of those four worlds. We're now in the world of formation, which is right above this world, which is the world of action. And the world of formation is where most of the angels come from. We spoke extensively about angels last time. There are different types of angels with different missions. Every angel usually has one particular mission. Some angels have many different missions throughout their existence. Some have very specific ones for the entire existence. For example, the angel of Michael. Actually, let me use one of your names. Does anyone have an angelic name here? Anyone? Is there Gabriella, for example, or no? Okay. You're higher than an angel. That's another thing that we spoke about.
As an angelic.
Yeah, her. No, Michael, there you go. So let's use his name. Michael is the angel of kindness, of chesed, and that usually is his existence. That's the very essence of what he is and what he does, what that angel does. So when God needs an act of kindness in this world, he'll send the angel Michael. Some angels, again, have their own pre-programmed missions. Some don't have pre-programmed missions in their existence. They just are, let's say, robots. And God decides, well, your program for today is this, tomorrow it's that, and the day after it's that. Now, we also spoke about the different levels of angels. Some angels are higher than other ones. Usually the higher ones are quieter, if you recall that, right? Like the seraphim that are quieter because they're more in tune. They don't need to make the noise. The more in tune you are with something, the less noise and fiasco you have to make about that thing. Now, these angels mostly belong to, as we said, to Olam HaYetzirah, to the world of formation. We ended the class last time by speaking about the difference between creation and formation, because the world after the world of formation is the world of creation, Olam HaBriah, which we haven't gotten to yet. Just still speaking about the angels mainly in the world of formation. But the difference between those two words, Yetzirah and Briah, or formation and creation, is really that formation speaks about something from something. But God creates something from something. Most of the creations of this world are not creations, they're formations. For example, this water bottle. Fine, you could say I created a water bottle if I'm the creator of this water bottle, but I already formed it because it came from plastic that I then shaped. And that plastic also came from the ground, which I dug and received. So most creations, human creations, or I would say human creations, are creations of something that came from something. Bria is entirely different. Creation is something from nothing. And that is therefore only in the divine domain. Only God can create something from nothing. I can't create, as a human being, no one can create something from nothing. I can just take, even though it seems like Israel now has a new invention where they take air and they transform it into water. You heard of that? Yeah. So it seems like they took something from nothing, water from air, but that's because in the air there's water and they were able to somehow, so it's something from something. So we can't really create anything from nothing. That's God's domain. And that's why even in modern Hebrew, I think we spoke about this a little bit, we rarely use the word livro, or to create. Litzor, when we speak of a piece of art, we say yetzirah, right? Because again, creations that are something from something are yetzirot, or formations, not creations. Anyway, that was the last idea. Let's continue on here in the middle of page 5. And we're continuing to speak about this world of formation and angels and so on. Does anyone want to read from the line again that says now as we have said, right? From that line.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Diana? You
want me to read?
Yeah, please go for it. Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Now, as we have said, angels are beings in the world. It is the domain of emotion and feeling. And since this is the case, the substantial quality of an angel may be an impulse or a drive say an inclination in the direction of love or a seizure of fear or pity or the like. To express a larger totality of being, something more comprehensive, we may refer to a camp of angels. Want me to stop you? Tell me.
Yeah, maybe just this following example and then we'll stop. Yeah, go for it. In the general camp of love, just
In the
maybe
general
go through.
camp of love, for example, there are many subdivisions, virtually innumerable shades and gradation of tender feeling. No two loves are alike in emotion. We all know that.
Right.
Just as no two ideas are alike. Thus, any general and inclusive drive or impulse is a whole camp, perhaps even a mansion, and is not consistently the same at every level.
Right. And this is also why when we speak about angels in the Torah, or King David speaks quite often about angels, we often speak about scores of angels. We don't speak about one singular angel again, unless he comes from a higher world and his whole existence is like Michael, is a specific attribute. But most angels, those angels that are in the world of formation, really can only relate to a very specific aspect of every emotion. Every emotion has many different aspects. And like the example he gives about love here, the way I love my children is not the same way I love chocolate, even though I love chocolate, especially dark chocolate. But it's a completely different type of love. One is much more selfish, one is much more selfless. Now, if angels are to come and help me with that love, then I would need two different loves, one for my love towards chocolate and one for my love towards my children. And it's true for every other emotion. I would say emotions can be broken down into thousands of aspects if you think about this. So if I need help with one specific emotion, then with the entirety of that emotion, I would need really thousands of angels. That's why King David says, Ki malachav itzavelach, that God should order his angels to guard you in all your ways. His angels in the plural tense. And that's why when we speak about the angels in the Torah that came to help Abraham in this week's portion and last week's portion, we also speak about scores of angels. We don't just speak about singular angels. One singular angel has very little abilities. Now, I want to go deeper into this a little bit. And again, I welcome comments and questions and disagreements and so on. But let's speak about the world of emotions for a moment, because the world of emotions is probably the most complex world. The world of the mind is much more clear. Thoughts are much clearer. The world of emotions is an explosive world. I'm not going to speak about it from a psychological that you can do. Please do add it. Or any other psychologist or therapist here, you can speak about it from a psychological standpoint, or from a Sigmund Freud standpoint, or conversely from Frankel's standpoint, or Carl Jung, or no, that's not true. But the world of emotions, I think, can, at least from a Kabbalistic standpoint, even though is a very complex world, they can be divided into two categories. You have emotions that are very selfish, and you have emotions that are very selfless. So let's go to the emotion of love, for example. My love of chocolate is a very selfish one. Why? Because I don't really care about the chocolate. If I cared about the chocolate, I wouldn't eat it. I would actually not turn the cocoa seeds into chocolate. I would let them grow on the trees or plants that they came from if I really cared about them. Me eating them means that I care about the pleasure that the chocolate gives me. So I care about myself. So it's a love, but it's a very selfish one. It's one that's me-oriented, not other-oriented. Rabbi Steinsaltz would often tell the story, and maybe we've shared it in the past. By the way, it appears in his book called Simple Words. It's a great book, Simple Words. It just appeared in Hebrew, no longer Milim Pshutot, where he analyzes these words that have become very common, that have lost the meaning because they've become so common, like love, or like friends, or like good deeds, or like sex, or like Hollywood even has an analysis of that. But when he speaks about love, he gives the analogy of the fisherman. Remember that? The fisherman who went fishing for a specific type of fish that their king loved. And they were commanded to go and find that fish in the ocean, and they were fishing for many hours looking for this fish. Let's say it was salmon. Said the king loves salmon. We need to find the salmon. And finally they find the salmon, and they fished him out of the waters. and the salmon is hearing the fisherman saying, yay, the king loves salmon. He's going to be so happy. And the fish says, great. I can't wait to meet this king, because if he loves me, he's going to throw me back in the waters. And eventually they bring him to the palace. To make a very long story short, they had an argument in the kitchen. How should they slice the salmon? Because the king loves salmon. So they had to call the king. And the king walks into the kitchen and he says, oh, slice him this way and not that way. And the fish says, oh, he's telling his chefs to slice me. He doesn't like salmon. He loves salmon. He loves himself. He loves the pleasure. He loves himself. So that's and many emotions are like that. Sometimes we think we love others, but really we don't love others. We love the pleasure that they bring us. We love the companionship. We love their ability to take us out of our loneliness. Many friendships are like that. Sometimes we love others because of benefits that they bring us. That's in the world of politics. It exists all the time. But that's not real love. It's love, but it's selfish love. Then you have selfless love. And again, you can do this with every emotion. You have selfless love. Selfless love is love that loves just because. Maybe the most basic example, maybe it's not a good one, but I don't know if you like hiking, or if you like the mountains here, if you like Camelback Mountain, pick and compete mountain, whichever. You don't need the mountain to do anything for you. Just looking at it and developing that emotion of love towards is good enough. You don't need anything from it. It doesn't need anything from you. It's just the sense of complete, wow, I'm in love with this creation. You love just to love. And now, if you want to test whether your emotion is a selfish one or is a selfless one, then put yourself to the test. See if you're willing to do for that object or that subject something that is out of your comfort zone, something that you don't agree with. If that test is passed, then you really love. If I say to my wife, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, and then she says, go and take out the garbage, and I say, I love you, but I won't take out the garbage, and then my love is not love. But if I did something outside of my comfort zone, then it's love. And very often God tests us in order to test our love towards him too. And I'm just speaking about the emotion of love. But when we come out of a comfort zone and we prove to God that we are in love with you, and therefore, even though we can't understand, we're very upset with you, we'll still do this, that's love. And that's why I often say to people that, well, they tell me, I feel uninspired. I'm uninspired either to pray, whether it's that relationship with God, or to do this mitzvah or that mitzvah. I feel uninspired in my relationship. I feel uninspired with my kids. I feel uninspired. Do it anyway, because that will prove your real love. Maybe you did it up until now just for selfish reasons. But if you feel uninspired, I'm kind of jealous of you, because that will test whether your love is true or not. And now it's true for every emotion. There's a selfish aspect to the emotion and a selfless aspect to the emotion. And Kabbalah speaks about this a lot. One more thing about emotions, and I want to open this up, is that, and the only reason I'm talking about this is because God will help us with every aspect of the emotions. But the other thing about every emotion is that every emotion really has 3 steps of development. If you think about this, take the emotion of love, or the emotion of anger, or the emotion of, what emotion do you want to take? Does anyone have a suggestion here? Any emotion. Let's stick with love.
Fear.
Of fear. Okay, good. The emotion of fear. Let's go to the other side of love. So you have chesed and gevura, or ahava and yira. Love and fear. Let's take the emotion of fear. So every emotion has to, in a way, pass this 3-step test in order for us to know whether to embrace it or maybe not. The 3 steps for fear is when I initially become afraid. There's really 0 control I can have over that emotion. I'm walking down a dark alley and some muscular tattooed guy who looks like a neo-Nazi comes towards me. I have fear. All right. There's nothing I can do. I'm a human being. Fine. Then there's a second stage. Do I want this fear to overtake me, to almost paralyze me? So I would say paralysis is step 2 of fear. That I might have control. I usually can have control over this, depending, of course, on the circumstances. But that's when I can say, oh, is this emotion good? If yes, I'll take it to step 2. If not, then I won't. Same with love. If I love someone, I fall in love. Even though usually I tell people you fall in lust, you don't fall in love. But I fall in love. Now, is this good for you or not good for you? If it's good for you, take it to step 2. Yes, let it develop within you. And then you have step 3. And that also we should have full control over. Step 3 is what we allow it to linger on and on and on, to the point that it affects our decision-making, it affects our sleeping, it affects our eating, it affects our lives. So if it's fear, paralysis, okay, I became paralyzed that moment, I can't do anything. Can I overcome it? Or am I now in step 3 where I'm controlled by it? Now, every emotion has that. You can do that with anger. Anger, I like to use the emotion of anger because I think it's the most pervasive emotion in society. People are angry all the time. Not in an external way, but in a step 3 way. Why? Because step 1 of anger is I'm angry. You just did something that I'm angry at. Okay, fine. Step 2 is that you allow that anger to become rage. It's horrible. That's destructive. But all right, let's say you did step 2 and you were enraged and you threw a chair and you broke a glass or whatever. Maybe it's terrible, but the day after, you've calmed down. Is that anger still lingering? Are you keeping a grudge? Many people keep grudges. Are you keeping a grudge? You know what? Well, that's when that emotion can become even more destructive than just rage. Rage is momentary. This is permanent, if you allow it to become permanent. So it's true for every emotion. The only way really to deal with the explosiveness of this world of emotion is to pass every emotion through this 3-step test. Some should go to step 3. If it's good love, if it's pure love, going back to love, then you should be madly in love all the time. Let it overcome you. Absolutely. If I'm in love with God, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. After all, you're in love with God, with your creator, with the creator that will then tell you, because you're in love with him, that he can use you as his soldier and use you as his partner to do good in the world. Fine. But if not, then you stop it right after it starts permeating step 2. Step 1, we can't really control. Step 2 and step 3, we have to be able to control. Anyway, these are 2 things about the world of emotion, selfless and selfish. And then you have 3 steps. But go ahead, Chana.
You also fall out of love with God, like if you get upset and like.
Yes, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berdichev would often say, great Hasidic master was always called him the advocate of Israel because he always found the positive in every situation, always really advocated for the Jewish nation. He would say you can be with God, you can be against God, but you can't be without God. So you can fall in love out of love, because really, as Elie Wiesel famously said, the opposite of love, well, it's not hatred, but it's indifferent. So, yeah, and I think that as long as you don't get into that indifference world and you're maybe you hate God, you're angry at God, you still have a connection with God. So you express it through hatred, but that means that you still have a connection. The worst that can happen is if you become indifferent, if you completely disconnect. Can that happen? It can happen, but I don't believe it really happens on all levels, because there's one level of us that always remains connected to God regardless. So you can just to answer your question, because you spoke about love, you can be madly in love with God, you can be semi in love with God, you can also be turn that love into hatred or that emotion into other directions, but I don't think that you can be completely void of love with God, because there's a part of you that always loves God, that always connected with God. Yes, Panina. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think that there is no such thing as an atheist. I really do. And Rabbi Steinsaltz would very often say that, because we may not call what we are believing in God, but everyone believes in something. So some call it science, some call it the universe, some call it whatever it is. Now, in many ways, even in our day-to-day, we believe in something. I'm believing right now in this chair. I don't check whether the nails are in place, and I just sat on it. I could have fallen if I didn't, if I relied only on my mind, but I had this faith in this chair. So in many ways, even atheists exercise faith all the time throughout the day. So even from that perspective, there's really no atheism. But in many ways, I think what atheists proclaim that their belief is just a cover-up. I've never met a real atheist, and I've met people who are self-proclaimed atheists. It's a cover-up to something that may be haunting them or bothering them. So they go the other way and say, we don't believe in God. But I think atheists are actually some of the most religious people I know. Really. And I mean that, because if you dig deeper, you'll see that there's a great believer that doesn't want to believe.
Exactly. Yeah. They passionately don't believe, but
Yeah. Look, on the other hand, the quality of atheism is not such a bad quality if you think about this too. The Maggid of Mezrich, who was the student of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, was once approached by his students saying, hey, it's terrible. There's atheists in the world and it's spreading so quickly like fire. And he said, why? I love atheists. So what? You, Rabbi, you love atheists? He says, yes. Say, for example, you're walking in the street and a poor man asks you for money. If you believe in God, you say, oh, God will help him. But if you're an atheist and there is no God, you have to take up money and help him. So the positive spin here is that atheism can be good if you use it to fuel your actions. Because there is no God, so you have to be more active. Yeah.
What happens at step 2?
Step 2 is when you allow it to lose its control. You allow it to just take over you. Step 3 is the lingering of it. And that's true again for really every emotion. The Tanya was one of the foremost, and by the way, we study it every Sunday at 7:30. Everyone is welcome on Zoom. But it's one of the foremost books of Hasidic philosophies, maybe the most important one, speaks a lot about those 3 steps. And what the Tanya says is that really the goal of the human being is to control himself from step 1 to step 2. Everyone acknowledges that step 1 is almost uncontrollable. Unless you live in a different plane altogether. What makes me angry might not be the same thing that makes every one of you angry. And what makes you angry might not be what makes you angry, right? Everyone has different triggers. But triggers are usually very hard to control. But step 2, that should be the goal of every human being to control. If it's a negative emotion, again, if it's a positive emotion, allow it to overcome you. Go for it. If you're in love with God, which is an easy example, but I would even say kindness should be that type of emotion too. Yes, it needs boundaries sometimes, so you have to really question yourself. But in most cases, let kindness overtake you. Go for it. It's not always good, so you have to be careful, but in many cases it is. Yes.
So I was wondering if the Tanya sort of has this dance, the choreography between the feeling brain and the thinking brain, because step 2 is kind of, okay, I feel something.
Right. Now
I have to exercise my function, my cognitive part, right? I have to think about it.
Right.
So the dance between the two, it sounds like the Tanya is actually doing that.
Yes.
That's probably where all psychology comes from.
Yeah.
In terms of self-control and rage and all that other stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Tanya actually has one of the great principles that speaks about, I don't want to deviate too much, but still speaks about what's called moach shalit al halev, which means that the mind controls the heart. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a heart, but it means that the mind should control it. Because of the explosiveness of this world of emotions, we can't always know whether these emotions will be productive and effective or not. And therefore you need the mind to control them. The mind that says, is this love now well directed? is this kindness well-directed? Sometimes kindness is completely out of place. Sometimes kindness shouldn't exist, right? It should be balanced by Gevurah. I can give you many examples for that. But again, that's when the mind comes in. Now, the Kabbalists also have a beautiful acronym to that, because if you think about this, there are 3 dimensions to human being. So you have the thinking, you call it the thinking brain, right? You have the thought, the moach, it's called mind, or the brain, moach. Then you have the lev, which is the heart, which relates more to the emotions. And then you have what's called kaved, the liver, which is in charge of the physical body. So you have moach, lev, kaved. Now, if you think about this, and this Kabbalists say something beautiful, they say that if your order of your modus operandi of operation is you think, then you feel. In other words, you don't let your feeling come first. You don't let your feeling be in the driver's seat. You think, then you feel, and then the rest of the body, then you're a melech, which means king, queen. Why? Because the acronym of moach, first mind, then lev, heart, and then kaved, liver, is mem, lamed, chaf, then you're a king. But if you're the opposite, if you've got everything upside down, then it spells out kaved, lev, melech, moach, spells out, the acronym spells out klum. You're nothing. Nothing. Klum. So it's just an interesting way of putting things. But that's the way it really, that's right. That should be the goal. The moach shalit al halev. That there's a great story about, speaking of the Tanya, which is very, interconnected with Kabbalah, but one of the great students of the author of the Tanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, was sent to spy on Napoleon. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi lived during the times of Napoleon. There was a great divide in the Jewish world during that time, whether they should support Napoleon or oppose Napoleon. And it was really based on this idea of whether the emancipation of Napoleon will be good for the Jewish world, or will it assimilate the Jewish world? Now, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi was of the opinion that Napoleon is not good for the Jewish world, and therefore he tried to help the Russian forces who were in war with Napoleon win. One of the things he did is that he told one of his students, go, you speak so many languages, you speak French too, go and spy on Napoleon. So he went and he spied on Napoleon for the Russians. And he once came back very troubled, and he told a story in a Hasidic gathering that I was sitting with generals in a room, and they were sharing secrets, and I was listening to all of them, and no one paid attention to me. And all of a sudden, Napoleon came into the room, and he saw me there, and he thought that I was out of place. But before he called me out, he took his hand and he put it on my heart. Why did he do that? Because if there was something to be suspicious of, my heart would beat much more than regularly. So he wanted to see if my heart was beating irregularly, if I was really nervous, because if I am nervous, it means that I'm maybe a spy. And I was able to control my heart fully. I had not allowed it to beat irregularly. And the Chassidim was stunned, and they said, "What?" And therefore Napoleon wasn't suspicious of it. So they asked him, "How did you do it? That's like incredible." He said, "What do you mean? It's the Aleph Bet. It's the foundation of Kabbalah. Moach shalit al halev, that the mind has to control the heart." So I put it into existence, and I was able to control my heart. That's the ultimate level of controlling your heart. I don't know if I wouldn't be able. Maybe some of you, I wouldn't be able to control my heart that much. But still, anyway. So that's the world of emotions. Going back to the angels now. Sometimes we do need help with emotions. Sometimes let's go to anger again. Someone makes us really upset, and I'm holding this grudge. So you can say, God, send me an angel for this specific grudge, or send me a score of angels for the anger that has led me to step 1, 2, and 3 for all of the aspects of anger. So if God listens to your prayers, just to go back to this, and he'll send you the amount of angels that you need to be able to tackle each and every aspect of this anger that you have. Okay, so that's just to go deeper into this. But let's continue, unless there's more comments, questions, disagreements. No? Okay, let's continue. Whereas among human beings, right? That's what we're up to.
That's right.
Go for it. Then, yeah, please. Why not? Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, whereas among human beings, emotions change and vary either as persons change or according to the circumstances of time and place. An angel is totally the manifestation of a single emotional essence.
Mhm.
The essence of an angel, therefore, is defined by the limits of a particular emotion in terms of itself, just as personality and inwardness define the self of each person in our world. An angel, however, is not merely a fragment of existence doing nothing more than just manifesting an emotion. It is a whole and integral being, conscious of itself and its surroundings and able to act and create and do things within the framework of the world of formation.
Right. Maybe one more line. Go for it.
Nature of the angel is to be, to a degree, as its name in Hebrew signifies, a messenger, to constitute a permanent contract between our world of action and the higher worlds.
Right. So I want to focus on this a little bit because at the end of the day, you may ask the essential question: why do we need the help of angels? Why does God help us with angels? And every one of us, by the way, right now is surrounded by angels. But why do we need them?
We need it.
Okay, so why do we need them? Why can't create the right? Because we do need them. You're right. But why God, who can do anything? Why can't He create a human being that can tackle his own challenges without the help of angels? Why the need for angels? And yeah, Rabbi Steinsaltz speaks about this a little bit, but the answer is because yes, you're right. We can be created without the need of angels, but you know what would happen then? It would be completely disconnected from the upper worlds. So in order to create this linkage between us and the upper worlds, because at the end of the day, all worlds are interconnected, as we spoke about, God created angels so that the upper worlds can help the lower worlds, and the lower worlds can help upper worlds too. So that there's a complete connection and synchronicity, I would say, between all of these worlds. Now, therefore, what does this mean? What it means is that when an angel comes down to help us, then he's drawing down a divine energy that maybe otherwise would not be accessible to us. When he completes his mission and he helped us with his mission, we're sending him, that angel, back with the divine energy through the obstacle that we overcame, through the mitzvah that we did, through overcoming that obstacle. So we're charging him, so to speak, with the divine energy that he brings back to the heavens, that the heavens would not be able to receive without us overcoming that obstacle. So by creating these angels, God is really creating a two-way street, a highway, so to speak, with two lanes, two opposite lanes, I would say, between the heaven and the earth. That's the reason why angels are created. Now, in many ways, I would say that the busyness of the lane from this world to the next is much more intense than the business of the lane from the heavens to the world. We are able to send back much more light and energy than they are able to send us. Therefore, why? First, because angels are inferior to human beings. When people say, I'm like an angel, oh, this person is an angel, or wow, what an angelic face. If we were really looking at it from a Kabbalistic standpoint, this would not be a compliment. It wouldn't be. Because you say that they're more limited. You want to really give a compliment, say why? They look like a human being. But a complete one, a wholesome one. That's a much higher compliment because human beings are higher than angels. And because we're higher than angels, we have more power than angels. Therefore, the lane that goes to the heavens is much busier than the lane that comes down from the angels. Our force, our power is stronger. But secondly, also, the angels are not capable of doing anything like mitzvahs. Mitzvahs that are considered to be the most valuable things that one can do and engage in. A mitzvah, what's a mitzvah? A mitzvah is the fulfillment of God's desire. That's what it is, in essence. When God says, do this, is because God wants that to happen. So he uses you to do it. So when you do a mitzvah, you fulfilled God's desire. Angels can't do that. The Torah was not given to angels, it was given to us. So when God says, respect your parents, when God says, love your fellows yourself, when God says, watch what you say, and don't say Lashon Hara, and you do it, you're doing, through that action, you're bringing a light that the angels, in the wildest imagination, cannot even create. So the business from that standpoint of our lane towards the upper world is also much more intense, therefore, because we can create things, we can fulfill and create a light through fulfilling these mitzvot that no angel can ever create. So really, God and the heavens have the more rewarding side of the deal here, and then we can hold that against God too. But that's the way it is. That's really the way it is. But again, the reason why God created angels is to create the synchronicity between the two worlds. You know, the Rabbi Steinsaltz speaks about the name word, the Hebrew word, or the name for angels, malach, which, as he says here, means messenger. Malach, a messenger. But I want to take it in a slightly different direction. What's interesting is that in the word malach, you also have, and Kabbalah speak about this, I know we spoke about it in another context, but you also have the word melech, which means king, as we said before, but it's not just any king. Aleph, melech. You have the letter Aleph within the word malach. If you take out the letter Aleph, you have spell out the word melech, which means king. And the Aleph that you took out really represents God. Aleph, the letter Aleph represents God because it has a numerical value of 1, and there's only really one entity. There's oneness in everything. So by connecting to angels and either this way or that way, we really are ensuring that God, Aleph, becomes the king. The kingship of God then permeates the world. That's the deeper idea, to go to the Hebrew word that Rabbi Steinsaltz is referring to. Okay, let's open this up. Otherwise, we're going to continue a few more lines, but please, I feel like I'm speaking too much today.
Can you break that down a little bit? You may have done it already.
Yeah, sure. The word mitzvah is an interesting word too, because many will tell you that it comes from the word tzivui or tzav, which means commandment, because it does refer to God's commandments. But on a deeper level, the word mitzvah, as Kabbalah teaches, comes from the word tzavta or tzevet. Tzevet. In Hebrew, that word still exists, modern Hebrew. Tzevet, which means a team, or tzavta, which means connection. That's because every time we do a mitzvah, we're not just following God's commandment, tzivui, but we're connecting we're partnering with God. Partnering with God and making this world a better place, a holier place. So every mitzvah is a partnership. The partnership. It's not just a good deed. I know mitzvahs are usually translated as such. Good deeds. They're not. That's not what it means. It means partnership. I'm partnering with God and making this world better. Which is essentially the way Judaism views our relationship with God. We're not slaves, like Islam would say. Islam means to subdue. We're not children, like Christianity would say, whether we have a father and we're a son, but we're partners. And because we're partners, we're also allowed to be upset at God, just like I can be upset if my partner is not doing his job at work. I can say to God, hey, I've done my side of the partnership. Where are you? Well, what's happening? You still have to do your side of the partnership. You have to be a good business partner in that sense too. But you have all the right to go and say, hey, I'm in your tzevet. I'm in your team. Doesn't feel like it.